All right, well, you guys ready? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, even though that it's gotten blustery and cold, Lord, we know that you're still in it. You still have good to give us. And Lord, if we have eyes to see, you are still moving all around us. So Lord, we invite you to move around us tonight, whether we are here in person or online, or whether we watch this video later. Lord, we just invite you to move. Reveal to us your word, and Lord, may we have hearts and minds that are open to receive it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I think everybody who's here, do you guys all have the handout? You guys didn't get one. No, there's a pack right behind you. There's two different ones. Everybody else, I think, was here last week and got it. We probably won't deal with it much tonight. But again, just kind of a quick reminder on that. And for anybody online who wants one, if you let me know, we'll try and get it to you. The two big questions about the book of Exodus is, when did this take place? And what was actually the route? So where, of course, the more important question, I guess, is where is Mount Sinai? So when we get there, we'll use scripture to give us our clues instead of, on the one hand, I'm all about tradition. If the church says it, I tend to want to believe it. But this is one area where there's about 3 or 4 different traditions. So, well, that's why those handouts, I think, will be helpful down the road. But with that, are there any questions about last week, Exodus chapters 1 and 2, before we hop into chapter 3? We got any questions? All right. We'll check my chat up there, Derek. Let me know if you got a question. So, I know a couple of our online people said they were going to hop on late, so when they hop in, if they've got questions, we'll deal with it. Exodus chapter 3. My first paragraph is 1 through 6. So let's hop in. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked and beheld the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So, again, what are our questions? What do you see? What do you notice? What questions does it make you ask?
You could at least want a little bit into Moses.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine.
We went over to Bluffton for supper, and my tummy's a little not. The burger was bigger than what I thought.
I think it's interesting how he mentions Jacob and Isaac, and whenever they do reference God, that it's always the God of Jacob and Isaac, and they're two brothers that are always warring.
So yeah, we have here, God refers to himself as a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but he doesn't go any further. We started to deal with this a little bit last week, and I think really the reality is those are the only 3 that God speaks to directly about being their God and that their descendants will inherit the land. With none of Jacob's kids do we get that message from God directly to them. It kind of becomes the whole family from that point forward. But he says his father. He doesn't give his dad a name. He just says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Or
I was just kind of wondering, what if Moses said, look there, that bush is burning. Well, we better stay away, might get burned going down the road.
You know, I mean, whenever I see a house on fire, I tend to want to stay away, especially if the firemen aren't there yet, because you know they're
I
coming.
feel like everybody that's like a dog, you know,
Oh, you
like
got
you
it.
can't turn away. Kind of thing. Maybe that was kind of his, you can't turn away. It draws you in like a moth. Mine talks about the taking off of the sandals and that is, that some religious places still follow a tradition of taking your sandals off before you enter a holy place.
So that is fairly common. Many world religions require you to take off your shoes before you enter a holy place. We really don't do that much within Christianity, even though this is clearly a part of our story. But it is a fairly common thing just across the board. But yeah,
Have you come across that?
I've never left the United States. That's why I'm looking forward to a Holy Land trip, because I want to experience some of these places. But Charles, you went to the Holy Land, didn't you? Was there places you had to take your shoes off in order to enter? Quite a few, or just one?
Mosque.
A mosque?
That's what mine says, that that's still practice for mosque. Entering a mosque.
I mean, we could get, with the preschools down there, we could get shoe cubbies and put them out here as we come into church. You have your spot to stick your shoes and come on in.
You don't want that. Trust me.
Teen boys, maybe not.
I will tell you, because of what we do that evening, you are invited on Monday, Thursday to take off your shoes, but it's not required.
So be prepared.
Just letting you know.
You haven't told them anything, have you?
Nope.
I have not told them much of anything. I just told them it's.
It's all a donation to my family fund.
I've told them it's an experience. I've told them it's one of the few things I will do over Bible study. I've told them they're going to have food. I've told the people online that they will want to be in person if they can. I don't think we're going to record it at all. I just don't think we're going to record that.
I know, and I work for ice cream.
You don't even know that much of it. Unless my wife is giving away secrets.
I can be paid.
You got two people out.
Remember, you missed a meeting.
Oh,
I think
There's that.
I think you need to rethink your circle.
my circle of trust
Next
is
circle, yes.
betraying me here.
Your wife's back there eating pizza.
What's that?
Anyway,
I'll do this, but that's actually, I'm not gonna tell you anything either. But I will say this, it is worth it. It's good.
back to scripture. Now we've had our infomercial and we've got everybody thoroughly confused.
But yeah, oh, I thought.
Well, $5 more, you can get.
All right, next paragraph. Free shipping.
Actually, I have one question.
Okay.
And a comment, maybe go down a rabbit trail. This is the phrase that Jesus points out when the Pharisees or the Sadducees come and say, there is no resurrection. Jesus goes back and quotes
This line.
this line. And what's the significance of that for those who may not realize?
Okay,
I think it's important.
so we have our shelf, right? And we have the box of stuff, right? I'm not for sure if this is in the box where you're talking about a lot of really deep things, but it's close to that. I wasn't planning to talk about the Hebrew understanding of life, death, and resurrection tonight, but do you want me to?
You need to answer Chris's question first.
Chris, why was he afraid? Was this the first time he heard from God? Yes, and yes, and yes. No one has heard from God in 400 years. Don't forget that piece. God has never shown up as a burning bush before. Now, yes, as you said, Mindy, there's the whole walk and gawk kind of concept. What in the world is going on over there? But on top of it, again, the last person who heard from an angel of the Lord was Jacob. And then come to think of it, I think the last time he heard from the angel of the Lord was when he got his hip displaced. So realistically, he has no reason to not be afraid. I mean, I would probably be afraid, and I'm a pastor, you know. I mean, there'd probably be a part of me to be curious, but it would be hard pressed to not have some level of fear. Any other thoughts on that? I'm keeping the box over here, Charles. But we can deal with that if you'd like.
I'll leave that.
What do you guys think? Do you want to deal with that discussion? We don't really have a lot of evidence in this section to talk about it, but I am willing to talk about it. So a real quick overview, very, very fast, because Charles will pester me until I give him an answer. The Jewish people, for all practical purposes, really didn't have a very good understanding of what we would call heaven, or for that matter, hell. At best, they would believe in what we would probably call soul sleep. At the moment you die, your kind of soul rests until whatever's next. Because the reality is, the Jewish people do not, very clearly hear me, they do not separate the soul from the body. You are one entity. Your body, your mind, your spirit, your soul, everything is intimately and irrevocably connected together. The notion that you have a soul and a meat shell that your soul resides in is actually a Greek understanding. It's not biblical, it's not even New Testament. And so the Jewish people would say, when you die, you die. When the breath is removed from you, the breath is removed from you. That being said, absolutely, God is saying, I am the God of Abraham. He's not saying I was the God of Abraham. He's saying I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. So while they are dead, and they are very clearly dead at this point, they are not gone. So what that means exactly, I don't fully comprehend. Because they clearly believe in a resurrection. We clearly believe in a resurrection. But I guess on a technicality, whether I'm immediately with God like that, or I'm asleep, and then the next thing I know, my next cognizant thought is I'm with God, and it's the same outcome, if that makes sense. And to be very clear, they believe you can be resurrected in the image and likeness of who you are. That's what we've been talking about on Sunday morning, right? Image and likeness. Image, the outside, the body, the physical. Likeness, the inside, the mental, your memories, and all that. It's all going to be resurrected. It will be glorified, and I hope that glorification takes off at least a good 50 pounds. But what exactly that looks like and how exactly that works, I'm not for sure, because in the Gospels, at least temporarily, God resurrects Moses and Elijah, and they're standing right beside Jesus, and they are very much alive and well. For a little bit. In Samuel, in the book of 1 Samuel, Saul very clearly calls up the spirit of Samuel, and he speaks to him, and it's very clear. So I don't have a great answer for you. Life, death, resurrection is still very much a mystery to me, but I know that it's true. And I think part of it is, and this makes God even more powerful to me, is that even if we are completely asleep and we are just gone, when our body decomposes and we're gone, it's clear God resurrects us with a physical body. Jesus, post the resurrection, had a physical body. He ate food, he was able to be touched and felt, but then he also walked through doors and walls. So I don't know exactly what it's, but for me, that actually makes God all the more powerful, that he's got us in his hand, even when our physical entity is completely and totally gone from this world's perspective.
So I'm gonna throw in
Go for it.
perspective, because I've done a lot of reading in the
Go
last
for it.
year and a half, because I have a vested interest.
I know you do.
And everything I've read, heaven is way beyond anything we can comprehend. There are colors there and sounds there that our earthly bodies cannot see, hear, feel. And so, yes, they have I've read that they have a physical presence to them, but they can't go through there, through things, because they float, they don't walk. And again, it's not an earthly thing. We are bound on earth with earthly things like gravity and all those things, and that doesn't exist. So it's this place that we can't imagine. We don't, it's beyond our comprehension. But everything I've read is exactly what you were saying, that it's all that and more.
It's all that and more. And if you ask me what I believe, and as Charles and I talked through when I was doing the Revelation study, which I know some of you have watched, at the end of the age, whenever that finally is, we are fully and physically really here. We're back here on earth with our new glorified bodies, and everything is real and true, just like it is real and true to us now. The one thing I don't fully comprehend is when we experience that in the now, like you said, it's so much more. How does that really work? But
the other things I've read is that your soul or your being is, could be a younger version. It's a healthier version. Like if people have passed on and they were sick, like our son was in an accident and he was definitely broken, physically broken. He would be whole. People that have cancer are healthy. Those are things I've read too, is that you are a healthier version of you and possibly a younger version.
So one of the greatest examples of this is Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones. They are dead, 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 dead. It's bones and nothing else, and they're dry bones. There's no moisture left in them, no marrow left in the bones. These people are dead. And yet God walks him through the process of bringing them back to life, and they are fully alive again. What happens to them after that? We don't know. We don't get that part of the vision. We don't know if they died again, if they went on and lived another 40, 50 years. This is a part of where it has to be faith, because like you said, we cannot comprehend what the next thing is. By the same token, we cannot fully comprehend what we lost when Adam and Eve sinned and how we were originally before God allowed us to face the consequences of our own actions. But what I know from Scripture is Abraham does not cease to exist just because he's dead. Isaac doesn't cease to exist just because he's dead. Jacob doesn't cease to exist just because he's dead. He's clocked out of here. They're clocked out. They're done, but they're not gone. The Jewish people say it's more of, like I said, that notion of a soul sleep. Your whole identity just kind of goes to sleep until God's ready to bring you back. For a lot of people that have the afterlife experience, more often than not, what I've read is that they're moved not just beyond life, they're moved beyond time to the next whatever it is. And so therefore, everybody is there. And how that works, I don't know. Like I said, that's why it's kind of in this category where I'm thinking I'm figuring it out for myself, but I don't know that I know it well enough to say, okay, you guys need to believe with me and let's go. Does that make sense? But again, I want to be very clear. God says that this physical body is not something we need to shed so that we can get to the spiritual body. The physical and the spiritual are intricately tied together. In God's economy, we cannot be one without the other. Does that make sense? We're not angels. And I'm talking about the spiritual angels and not just God's messengers. Anybody can be a messenger for God, but I'm talking about that actual spiritual, whatever this angel of the Lord thing is, we never get to that category. That's a totally different creation, or it's Jesus, or it's something, but it's not us, nor do we ever get there. We can interact with them, yes. But that's not what we become. We are something unique, and God doesn't ever intend for us to be anything other than the unique thing that we are. And the unique thing that you are is good if you allow the Holy Spirit to work with you. Is that good enough?
I just opened the box.
Dawn's here. Dawn, did I handle that okay?
She gives you thumbs up.
See, that's why it's the box. It's the box you open and you deal with occasionally, but you very rarely does it get to stay out of the box. You put it back in. The stuff on the shelf is, well, it's the stuff on the shelf. Good enough? All right. Verse 7, we've made it so far. 7 through 12. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me. And I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. So what do you think?
That's what I get for talking to a burning bush.
The walking gawk for Moses gave him a really big job.
But I think he has a sentiment that a lot of us feel when you get a call from God, why me, is always, I think, what a lot of people say. And as we've learned, he doesn't use the best of the best.
Absolutely.
Still we say, are you sure I can do this?
So in trying to figure out a name for this, I just called it Beginnings Verse 2. And these themes are going to continue on. So why Moses? I mean, he's a murderer. He's a runaway. He is wanted by the authorities. This is not who realistically you would think is prime material. He had a political career. He ended it very quickly, and now God's sending him back into a political career. But by the same token, the why me question is always coupled with the why not me?
Don't we think that Moses had some sort of speech impediment too?
It's implied, we're not quite there yet, but it is implied that he struggled with,
That could be part of the why me.
or it could be, God, why me? Don't you know they want to kill me if I go back to Egypt? Are you sure I really need to go back where they've got wanted posters of me in?
My other question is, and it comes up several times, the milk and honey reference.
Ah, milk and honey.
The roads would be really sticky when.
So they're
So,
always referring to it as the land.
so what do you think of when you think of milk?
Nourishment.
Pure.
Pure,
But nourishment.
nourishment. What else? You might?
Like a mother feeds their baby milk, how they survive.
Don, I'll get back to yours in just a second. I'm going to handle the milk and honey thing. So milk comes from animals. It is a product of the creatures you keep, right? Mostly in our culture, it's cow's milk and goat's milk. Though you can get sheep milk as well. We don't really use that much here in America, but they're options.
Camel's milk.
You can get camel's milk. I know a lot of Arab people use that. But milk implies that you're in a place where the pasture land is fertile enough and the water is plentiful enough that the animals can produce milk. It implies this notion that the domestic life is good. I mean, you can have good fields, but if you don't have plentiful water, the animals aren't going to produce enough milk for you to use it for yourself. They might produce only enough for their offspring, but that's it. You have to have fertile water, lots of water and fertile ground in order to get milk, right? Does that make sense? So a land flowing with milk and honey means it's in a land where the domestic life is good. By the same token, honey, what do you think of with honey? Bees, pollination.
Soil would have to be good.
Soil probably pretty good. Dawn, you want to chime in anything on bees? She's got bees, I know this.
You just unmute her.
Well, you would have to have things blossoming.
Okay?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We
Okay.
hear you.
Yeah, you'd have to have things blossoming for the bees to thrive.
So, but in general, honey only recently was something that we cultivate. Honey was often something that was wild. And it was often seen as a treat that was discovered, not something that you harvested. She's got a couple, are your bees back yet? Have you got your swarm yet, or are they?
No, spring.
Spring. Well, we're in spring.
Well, doesn't feel like it here today.
So milk has to do with the domestic life. Honey has to do with the fact that the wild areas are just as plentiful. So a land flowing with milk and honey is a land that is prosperous. A land in which the domestic life is good, a land in which the wildlife is good, a land in which you see God's blessings all over the place. Does that make sense? Now, when we think of Israel, when we think of the Holy Land, what do we think of? Desert. The Holy Land that we go and walk on is not the same Holy Land that they would have experienced. Twofold. One is, if we get there, I mean, at the rate we're going, it's going to take us about 10 years before we get into, the prophets and stuff like that. There was this nice little way of handling things that when the enemy came and conquered a land and they just didn't want to deal with you anymore, they would literally take stones and beat everything green until it was dead. And then they would sprinkle salt on the land to make sure everything burned. That kind of stuff happened a lot over the last 3,400 years since this happened. The other side of it is, and this is my personal belief, again, Samuel Paget, take that for what it is. But because I believe in the flood and I believe in that was true, I told you guys my theory that probably we had an ice age after that. And if most of Europe is covered in ice, where does that move the temperate land down to? Germany right now is fairly temperate. But if you push ice 300, 400 miles south further from the Arctic Circle to in the middle of Germany or all the way to the Alps, what of a sudden happens to the Mediterranean? It's not near as hot as it is now. And so I think most of Egypt was in the desert. This notion of the Sahara wasn't true at that point. They've proven that the Sahara used to be a lush rainforest about 5,000 years ago or so. And so I think that the land of Canaan was far more like here than desert. But we're talking about 3,400 years. A lot happens in 3,400 years. And when you're talking about an area where just in the time we've been reading about them, they've already had a number of wars, and it's not going to get any better. And if you deal with the very unruly people, then you don't just go conquer them and let them stay there. You conquer them, you move them out, you destroy whatever they left behind. So, this notion of a land flowing milk and honey, we can't think about Israel as we experience it today. But it's speaking about a land where God will provide them everything that they need. Where? Any other thoughts on the second paragraph of chapter 3? All right?
Yep.
Gonna die? I don't want to do a funeral today. Laura would probably kill me if you died right away.
Gary, hold on to it. Pass out.
You don't want to do mouth to mouth either, do you?
I've done it.
Okay, moving on that note. 13 through, does anybody else's break up?
Dawn has her hand up.
Oh, Dawn does? Oh, your question, yes, thank you. Always thought it was interesting, God says, I am sending you, then says, I will be with you. Sending and with, so going with me. Yes, absolutely. That's the thing, God never sends us to do something that we have to do it alone. Now, of course, we know Moses is still going to complain about this, and eventually God's going to relent and let Aaron go with him. But the reality is, God was never asking Moses to do it by himself. And he's definitely not asking Moses to do it out of his own strength. I use this saying quite a bit. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips those he calls. And to take it the next step further, and he goes with them as they do what he is called. Make sense? I mean, where all the other gods that we've dealt with and all the other gods we will talk about seem to be tied to a location, our God is not. Our God is tied to his people. And realistically, every human being is his people. It's just whether or not they choose to be a part of his family. Still tracking? Okay. That's where we read the rest of the chapter. 13. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you. God said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me and saying, I have observed you and what you have been done to you in Egypt. And I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now, please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house, for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians. So what do you think? When you notice, what questions does it make you ask?
They're gonna take the Egyptians off, isn't they?
He is either going to so tick them off that they just want them gone and they'll give anything for them to leave, or he's going to make them so humbled that they no longer care. And maybe it's a combination of both. Anybody else?
So verse 20, mine says the word wonders. He said, I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with the wonders I will perform. It says here, prediction of the plague. Why does it say I'm gonna make a plague? He always speaks in.
So let me ask you a question. If God wants them to simply follow and believe, does he really want them to depend upon the plagues to make it happen? By the same token, if Moses announces beforehand, these are the plagues that God is going to send, do you think that Israelites leaders are more concerned about going into the desert to worship God, or do you think they're concerned that the plagues might hit them as well? Again, it's that whole thing of we like to know the whole path, but God rarely gives us anything more than the very next step. Because often if we knew the whole plan, we probably wouldn't sign up at first. But he does give them a clue. I am going to perform wonders. I'm going to prove that I am not only the God of the Israelites, I'm not just a Hebrew God, I'm not just a Canaanite God. I am a God that functions in Egypt as well. And that's a pretty big statement. Amy, Philip. Oh, Chris, we'll go with Chris first. Isn't that stealing? Not if they give it willingly. I mean, you know, if they say take this and get out of here, then that's technically not stealing. Amy, it's ingenious. Send them off with all the plunder they need and not having fought the battle. More like paying them to leave, Chris. Yes, I think it's more like that. We don't want you here anymore. Take this and get out and don't come back. And yeah, like bribing them to leave. Just go. Yes.
I've never seen this before, I've read it so many times. it says Moses and the elders were supposed to go before Pharaoh.
Yeah, so I was waiting to see if somebody caught that. Moses is concerned with going before Pharaoh, but God tells him right from the beginning, it's not just you, Moses. It's supposed to be Moses and the elders of Israel. We know the story, so I'm going to ask the question, do the elders of Israel ever go face Pharaoh? No. We'll double check it here after a bit, maybe probably later on, but the reality is, no. God tells them the plan. You're not going to have to face them alone. In fact, it should be all of them. And according to tradition, it's supposed to be 70 of them. So Moses is number 71. That carries a little bit more weight, doesn't it, than a single man or two of them? What else do you notice? Anything?
Why did you tell them just take a 3-day journey into the desert?
All right. This is where the map comes in handy. The original plan, well, let me rephrase that. The original plan that God told Moses to tell the Israelites was a 3-day journey. Right? How far can you travel in 3 days?
Not too far. What are you driving?
What are you driving? Well, they're slaves. So probably not much. They might get the beat up jalopy out back. You know, we're going Beverly Hillbilly style with a bunch of people in the back of the truck. But again, at this point, 3 days is far enough away that you are completely separate from Egypt. It's enough to leave Egyptian territory, but it's not so far as they can't come back. Does that make sense?
So it's like a little kid running away but running to the treehouse instead of actually going down the street.
I think there's that reality. I mean, you know, for us, if we're taking a vacation, we take a week's trip, right? Approximately, there's the extended weekend vacation, you know, a couple 100 miles, and we leave the state, and we go stay somewhere, and we come back. At least initially, God is giving them the impression that they're going to take a short trip, come and worship Him, and then possibly go back. But do you remember what God said the sign that this would come true is? Be back in the paragraph before. I see it yet? What is the sign that God gives to Moses? You need a hint, it's in verse 12.
You brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain.
On this mountain. Right now, my brain is thinking, and I'm thinking of when our kids were little and we were going on a trip. And they would say, how far do we have to go? Are we there yet? Typically, I would say not far or not long. Now, not far to an adult driving a car on the interstate is relative, isn't it? Compared to not far with a kid walking down the street. Now, I don't know exactly why God seems to give two different things here, but God makes it very clear that wherever this mountain of Horeb is, His plan is to bring them there. But even if you go with the traditional place that they call Mount Sinai, it's still further than a 3-day trek to there. I guess if you had trained soldiers running at a full sprint, it's a 3-day journey. But not if you've got all of the slaves of Israel going, is it a 3-day journey? And I've never really thought until this moment of why God gave those two very different answers. What do you guys think? Go for it, Charles.
I was just thinking, actually, God told him to ask Pharaoh to let them go 3 days away. But God wasn't saying, that's my ultimate plan.
So he's giving them first step.
He's giving Pharaoh that first step.
He knows Pharaoh's going to say no. So instead of, it being a barter, well, what if we just go 2.5 days away or 2 days away? God's going to ultimately say, no, you're going to let us go. You won't let us just go for a short time. So now I'm going to force you to let us go totally.
Showing the Egypt or the Israelites that Pharaoh is completely unreasonable when it comes to their worship of God.
What do you guys think? I think I kind of go there. I kind of felt like it was a little bit of the telling the kids, it's just down the road. Well, the road happens to be 350 miles long, and we'll get there when we get there, but I don't know. That kind of feels like might be the case. Amy, things might have been different if Pharaoh had let them go out the 3 days. Probably. I think there's probably a lot of truth to that. It's, if Pharaoh had let them go and actually allowed them to worship God, then maybe Pharaoh could have been redeemed. And Pharaoh and his people could have been spared. And they would have went out and worshiped, and God would have made them a people, and then they probably would have come back into the land of Egypt and been evangelists for God. But that's not what Pharaoh had in mind. Any other thoughts?
I was just saying that was good.
What?
I was just saying that was a good observation.
That's a really good observation, Amy. Let's jump into chapter 4. Let's see where it goes. 1 through 9. Then Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you." The Lord said to him, "What is it that in your hand?" And he said, "A staff." And he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses ran from it. I never got to ran from the part. But the Lord said to Moses, "Put out your hand and catch it by the tail." I played with a lot of animals when I was a kid, but I never remember trying to catch a snake by the tail. That just doesn't seem too wise. So he put out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Again, the Lord said to him, "Put your hand inside your cloak." And he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. Then God said, "Put your hand back inside your cloak." So he put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you, God said, or listen to the first sign, they may believe the latter sign. If they will not believe even these 2 signs, or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. Wondrous signs. Giving them 3 right now, right? What else do you notice? What else do you think?
I'm gonna be honest, I would probably be a little freaked out on that happened. Seriously.
Just a little freaked out, yeah. I mean, yeah, and just a little bit. I mean, The last time we experienced anything incredibly mighty of God was the flood. Right? I mean, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have all had encounters with God. And Jacob has a very physical encounter with God, but the reality of something wondrous hasn't been seen for at least 600 years. At least. And probably closer to 1,000 years. So I don't know. I mean, I think in some ways we fail to realize just how powerful these three signs are. What you got? I see you cheesing.
I'm just. I don't believe you. I need some sort of proof. As I recall, children of Israel.
Let's see. Chris says God is giving him pretty good instructions. This is the first time he's making it pretty clear. This is very straightforward. Moses, go talk to the leaders. The leaders go with Moses to talk to Pharaoh. Moses, if the leaders don't believe you, you do one. If they don't believe one, you do two. If they don't believe two, you do three. Does this sound like somebody who should have been a leader in Egypt and able to command lots of people? This is a remedial school. He's back in first grade. First grade faith right here. Anybody else guilty of first grade faith? Anybody? What?
Then the question,
Yeah.
we still do that.
Oh my goodness, yes. Some days I wish I was smart enough to be in first grade faith. Any other thoughts or questions? Let's keep going. 10 through 17. But Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But he said, "Oh my Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. That's probably an understatement. And he said, "Is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand this staff, with which you shall do the signs." I just want to add, because I said so.
With some tense music.
With some tense music. Go to your room. No subject.
I think all of this, yes, please God, it's really not what I want to do. God, I can't get through this, even if you say I can't. I understand where he's at.
I think we all do, and that's probably what makes it all the more fun, because we have been there. We know what it's like to say, "God, I'm not certain you really know what you're doing."
I don't think I can do it.
I told you guys, I was a scientist. I hated to read. I never got above a C in spelling. I didn't like speech, and I really, contrary to popular belief, don't like being the center of attention.
And then what happened?
Is there a question there?
I'm pointing out the fact that God does what God wants to do. And if he wants you to do something, he'll make it happen. Yes, sir.
I was along that same line. So my first grade teacher told my mom. My mom luckily didn't tell me. Said Charles can do anything he wants to do as long as he never becomes a public speaker. God wasn't listening. Or was laughing, I don't know.
So, to our point, thank you, Chris. God spells it out very clearly. He says, I'll be with you every step of the way. I'll tell you what to say. I'll give you the power. I've got this. And Moses goes, but no. What else we got? Anything? Amy, but God, yeah, exactly. At some point, anybody ever heard that nice little saying, God's just a cosmic killjoy? Anybody heard that before? Or that God wants to zap people? If God was ever going to zap somebody, I'm pretty sure Moses is right up there at this point. If he didn't zap Moses, he's probably not going to zap us. I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems to me, because if this was my child, it'd be more than go to your room without supper. It's you're grounded, give me your phone, you're not leaving your room for the next 15 years.
Something else that kind of stood out to me is that God is saying, he said he's not good with speech. He said, I'm the one who made you. I'm the one that made you. I made people deaf. I made you, all those things. And it goes back to that. I do that for a purpose. There's something behind that. Instead of looking at it as I don't know, not a tragedy, it's not the way I want, but more of a blessing, which is very hard to do. It's that why, instead of the why, it's the why me, instead of the why not me, what good can come from this? And so it's kind of stated in here as well.
So, yeah. He throws out an excuse and God immediately says, who made your mouth? If you think it can't work, guess what? I invented mouths. I know the intricacies of how the tongue works. You think you can't talk? Just wait. But then it dawns on me, and the thought I just had, God knew this whole interaction was going to take place. And God says, fine, your brother Aaron, who is already coming out to you. Did you catch that? Yeah. I knew you were going to complain. I knew you were going to throw up these rebuttals. Well, guess what? I've already brought my trump card. You're still going to do this. I'm just going to make it to where you don't get all the glory. And now you got to do it with Aaron and all those Israelite leaders. Anything else you noticed? Oh, and don't forget your staff. Sorry.
God says, hey, take on the Egyptian army. Here's a stick.
Take on the most powerful nation in the world, and I'm going to give you your brother to speak for you and a stick and a magic coat that you can stick your hand in. Amy Phillips. Does that mean God hopes we won't decide that way we do? He hoped Moses would say yes, but had Aaron on the way anyway. I think that there's probably a lot of truth to that.
You've said, kind of based on our life's decision, here's our path that God has for us, but a lot of times we go this way, and he's like, okay, I can make that work. Kind of maybe the same situation. I would hope Moses would do this, but I'll send Aaron and we can make that work.
And maybe God had a different path for Aaron if Moses had just said yes. We don't know what Aaron's role was prior to Moses arguing with God. We don't get that interaction. We don't get the fact that Aaron may have had a dream, said, hey, get up, you've got to go into the desert and go find your brother Moses, who's been gone for 40 years, by the way. Just a minor point there. You know, we don't know what caused Aaron to find him.
You gotta realize too, that those wooden posters were 40 years old, they wouldn't recognize.
The mustaches, you know, one has a big nose, one's got bushy eyebrows. Don't even know what Moses looks like anymore. Any other thoughts? All right, next paragraph. 18 to 20. Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt to see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand.
They took one donkey,
Yeah, that's
the whole family.
He had just two boys and his wife.
It was one of them four-door donkeys with a third seat option.
Fold up third rows. Notice, what does he tell his father-in-law? I'm going to take on Pharaoh. Can I take your daughter and your grandkids along with me? I just want to go check on my family. Nice dodge there, Moses. Chris, so if God always knows the outcome before it happens, why would he need a backup plan? Box of stuff I don't fully comprehend. In this moment, being real honest, I think I've never really made the statement I made before about Aaron. But it really makes me wonder what God was planning to do with Aaron if Moses had said yes to his plan A. You know, there's God's perfect will, and then there's being in God's will, and then there's being on the verge of out of God's will, and then there's out of God's will. And, you know, like you brought up earlier, I really do think that sometimes God says, this is my yes, this is my maybe, and this is I can deal with it. Or actually, this is my yes, this is I can deal with it, and this is my maybe. And so it seems like, I guess my inclination, Chris, is that God already had a plan for Aaron as well. And it might have been different, it might have been the same, it might have just been. What did I just say that Moses used as his excuse to go back into Egypt?
family.
I'm concerned about my family. God's sending his family out to meet him. I don't know how I never noticed that before.
What, that he lied to his father-in-law?
No, that God is basically thwarting his efforts to keep his mission hidden. He's worried about his family, and his family is literally coming to see him. Which means if it's just about seeing the family, the moment he sees Aaron, he needs to go back to his father-in-law. He's lied to his father-in-law. He was trying to tell a little white lie, right? Well, Dad, we're going on a trip. We're going to go see the beautiful pyramids and the Nile River, and we'll be back. We're just going to go check on family and see how everybody's doing.
You know, back to the question about why he had backup plans. God also knew that he had given us free will. And that could have changed things if they would have been stubborn enough to exercise that free will.
I'm fairly certain that God in his love will allow us to keep saying no, and he will cycle through plans A through Z and AA through ZZ and AAA through ZZZ. God will do whatever he needs to do in order to make his will happen. He wants to work through us, but he'll go around us if he has to.
So my teacher brain goes immediately to, I always say as a teacher, you have plan A, B, and C in your back pocket. Because
Right.
you have all kinds of kids sitting in front of you. And so you want to get them here, but you can bring some of them right there, but some of them, it takes a little bit longer to get there because you've got to throw some other things out there to get them there. That's kind of where I'm going with this. I'm thinking, yeah, you know, because God's a teacher, he's teaching us and we're his students. So yes, he has this plan, but some of us are gonna take a little bit longer to ultimately get
And apparently 40 years of being sandblasted in the desert did not make his head any less.
there.
I don't know. I mean, in some ways, I don't want to go all the way to like the Calvinist belief that this always was God's plan A, that realistically Moses and Aaron didn't have any choice in this. I can't go there, but I think more along the lines of what you're saying. I think God in his love has, I've got plans A through Z that are within my will, and I've got plans A through triple Z that are within my, we can handle this. And if you're not going to do it, then I'll go over here to plans Roman numeral 1 through M, and we'll do it without you if I have to. But I really want to be over here. And I think it's more about God's love than it is about him not being powerful enough to make us do what he wants. To him not, I think God is still sovereign. If God really wanted to make us do it, he could make us do it, but that's not the point. It's as much about forming us through the process as it is completing the task.
I think it's a good, when you talk about God the Father, you come at it as a parent perspective. You don't will them into do what you wish them to. You have to guide them in that direction. And that's kind of what I think it is. It's like guidance. And some take a little longer to get there and go on their own path. But, I mean, our oldest son, who's a huge Purdue fan, did not do himself any favors in high school to get him there. And I remember saying to him, this is not the path I would have chosen for you, but this is the path you've laid out for yourself. And so he had plan B. And he was okay. I mean, he got there eventually, but it was definitely plan B.
But probably a plan B2.
Except for his dad.
And I'm going to say to Dean, we're going to move on. I think
That's true.
you know, I think you've pointed out something there that we often forget. Throughout most of the Old Testament, what do they refer to the first part of the Godhead as? The Lord. He is in charge. Yet by the time we get to the New Testament, they're not upset that Jesus calls him God the Father. They're upset that he calls him my Father, as if he is God. The notion of the head of the Godhead being the Father is not foreign by the time we get to the New Testament. He is the Lord. He is the giver of life. He is the creator. He is the sustainer. He is all powerful, all knowing, and all present everywhere. And yet, he's our Father. And yes, none of my kids are here, so they can't defend me on this or throw me under the bus. And yet, yes, I'm not near as nice at times as their mother is. But they know I still love them. And they know I'm still going to do what's right by them, even if I have to be a little hard on them at times. And so I think sometimes we forget that reality that God is our Father, and so therefore he will let us make our mistakes. He'll be there to pick us up, but he'll let us make our mistakes. And he's willing to go past his plan A if it means eventually we come along. Somebody got something?
Chris says,
Amy says he adapts because of our free will. And Chris goes, so more like he knows how it's gonna end, just not 100% sure how we're gonna get there. I like to use the old saying, you guys familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure books? All of the options are already written in the book. There's only so many ways you can get to the end. God knows all the options and he knows how the end is going to be, but he lets us choose our journey as we get. Does that make sense? Let's read the next paragraph. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. What a bully. God is a bully, right? Notice God doesn't say here, let us go for a 3-day journey. He tells Moses, now that Moses is on the road and has agreed, I'm going to do some of this. He says, tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And all those wonders that you thought you're going to do in front of the leaders of Israel, guess what? You're going to do them in front of Pharaoh. A little bit of bait and switch. Maybe.
You know, if God says, I'm gonna harden his heart, then you think you might as well turn around and go back into the. But he's telling him exact kind of, and this is like Chris said earlier, this is like the most direct direction that we've heard.
God is getting this very specific and he's warning of every step of the way. And that phrase right there is the most frightening phrase in all of Scripture. Whether you call it, and I will harden his heart, whether you say, and I will give them over to the desires of their heart, whether it's, I will let them go where they want to go, however you want to say it, it's, Don says verses 24 to 26 puzzle. Well, we're not there yet, Don. Give me a second.
I was gonna say, I haven't heard that.
We're not there yet.
I don't remember Moses actually saying this to Pharaoh.
Yeah, I'm not for sure Moses really does say that last part, does he? We'll get there. What do you notice? What else do you notice about 21 through 23? Anything?
Well, he says, in mine it says, when you arrive back in Egypt, go to the Pharaoh and perform all the miracles that I have empowered you to do.
So he's been given 3 miracles: the staff, the leprosy, and water to blood. Those he has been given power over.
But then he says here, in mine it says, but I will harden his heart so he will refuse to let the people go.
So sorry,
So God's already, I mean, he's controlling it, but yet I want you to go in and do these 3 tricks.
you go do your part and understand when Pharaoh doesn't respond, I got you.
This guy let them know that he gave them the 3 tricks, but it's not gonna work. So be prepared for that, but there'll be more beyond.
I mean, those are 3 tricks, but they're miracles even. But remember back at the front, I mean, Mindy pointed it out, God said he's going to do wonders.
But wouldn't you want to look at him and say, then why am I doing the tricks?
I don't think I will ask him that.
Larry's just decided, whatever God says, no matter how crazy it is, if I run with it. Dress like a pink elephant and play the ukulele.
He's gonna turn around in the donkey and go, kids, I'm like, keep your mouth shut.
You wanna get out of this line?
Yeah.
Do what he says.
You all watch this.
I would, but though, on the other hand, Steve, it's kind of like God is saying, is showing Pharaoh. So Pharaoh can't come back and say, you never showed me why you were so powerful, God. How was I supposed to know you're that powerful? Now, Pharaoh didn't have an excuse. He knew, he could see God being powerful.
Pharaoh would go, you mean there was tricks and I didn't get to see them?
So, in this passage, though, God gives Pharaoh a choice. You lose my son, who is your slave, or you lose your son. God's telling Moses, he's going to let Pharaoh know, you get a choice. You're losing something today. Do you lose those people that you're angry at anyway, and you really don't want around because you don't want them to join up with your enemy? Or do you lose that son that you're so proud of?
Why wouldn't Pharaoh just slap him in jail for making that threat?
Well, as we're going to see, Moses never follows through with the threat. He says to let my people go. He doesn't give Pharaoh the ultimatum. Which brings us to the next paragraph, and Don, I'm going to handle verses 24 to 26.
Next week.
All right.
Which won't happen because there's an awards show next week.
All right, so 24. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zepporah took a flint and cut off the son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, so let him alone. It was then that she said, a bridegroom of blood, because of the circumcision. Okay. So let me pause. There's a couple things we need to know in order to make sense out of this. First of all, they're Israelites from the family of Abraham, and the boys aren't circumcised. You remember back in Genesis where God said, anyone who is mine will be circumcised, must be circumcised. The second thing here, and you cannot know this from the way the English is written, and I'm sorry, guys, but in verse 24, where it says, on the way the Lord met him. Who is the him? It's not Moses. What's the Israelite family motto up to this point? If we come to what?
Egypt or bust.
Egypt or bust.
One for all for one.
No. If we face a problem bigger than what we like, let's run away. Has that not been the Israelite family way of doing things? We know Moses never gives the second half of that ultimatum. Which means Moses is on the verge of chickening out. So if God has given this message to Moses, you either release my son or I take your son. That's not just a message for Pharaoh. Do you hear what I'm saying? You either release Israel like I've told you to do, and I've empowered you to do, or I take your son. it wasn't just a message for Pharaoh. God is going to release someone. He will take someone if he has to, but he hopes that he'll follow the rules and release his people. One of the clear things that we have to understand is, to Larry's credit, if God gives you a message, you better well deliver it. Because whatever consequences were given with that message, if you choose not to give the consequences to the person who needs to hear it, you reap those consequences.
I think that number 24, where the hymn we're talking about, that hymn is Moses' son, is a carryover from the previous paragraph, where it says, "Let my son go so he can worship me, but since you refuse, I will now kill your firstborn son." So he's talking, the next paragraph, that hymn that he's.
That hymn
is Moses' son.
is Moses' son. It is a dual meaning, and you won't get that from the English.
So Amy says, for sake the son.
And there's the thing. Ladies, you get your first hero of the faith. Zepporah says, Moses, you're a moron. First of all, we should have already had this done. I told you to do this back before when you told me that you're part of the family, and we didn't get him circumcised back then. So I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to keep God from taking our son, and you're going to go do what you're supposed to do. You are my bridegroom of blood. Let's go get it done. I was like, oh, wife.
Yes, dear.
I told my wife that she would be happy tonight.
Proud of woman.
That's right.
But
Somebody's got it.
for the record,
Take it, bud.
for the record, we have had both women who caused the problems, and now we've had women who solve the problems. But for the record, we have had far more men who caused the problems than the men who solved the problems. And for the record, more often than not, the men who finally solved the problems caused part of the problems in the first place. But this notion, for me, is really important. Because for me and my way of reading scripture, this is why whenever the children of Israel refused to go into the land the first time for God's plan A, it's a very big deal. It's why they end up spending 40 years in the desert. Because God said, if you won't bring my message of hope to the people, then you don't get to be in the land either. It's why later on in Joshua and Judges, whenever whole groups of people are slaughtered, their blood is not on their heads, but it's actually on the Israelites who refused to go in and give them the good news. When God tells you to do something, you really better do it. Now, we've dealt with over 1,000 years of history so far between Genesis and Exodus. And God, not very often does God tell you to do something, does he? We've had don't eat the fruit. We've had build a boat. We've had go to the land I showed you. And now go let my son free. Not very often does God lay down a rule, does he?
You know, I was just thinking, as pastors, we get that thing in the New Testament that you can't lead your family. How can you lead the church of God? This circumcision for them was the first step in preparing them to worship God. And he didn't even lay the foundation for him to be ready to God, but yet he was going to be the pastor.
Does that help, Don?
So and you can tell me if I'm not understanding it correctly, but are we to assume that Moses was kind of living a fake life up till this? If he didn't have his son circumcised?
So, which is Moses' true life? His life in Egypt or his life in Midian? The answer, of course, is
Well,
yes.
if he was raised by Egyptians though, I mean, he probably didn't have that much of a Christian God influence. He had God's influence.
But if we go back to last week's lesson, it's very clear he knows he is a Hebrew.
But you can know that you're Hebrew, but not really believe in what you.
And this is the mark of being a Hebrew.
But he was raised by his mother until he was weaned, and for them it was like 5 years old.
And his father-in-law is a priest of God Most High. Which means that Jethro would have been circumcised. Jethro is a Midianite who is a cousin from Abraham's second wife and kids. Moses doesn't have the excuse.
But was Moses circumcised?
I'm certain he would have been. He would have been circumcised before his mama put him in that, basket in the Nile River.
This sounds like something to be on Jerry Springer.
Again, why do you think I called Exodus verse 2? It's a little more intense. We've upped the music. We've added some more instruments into the background here. It's going to get a little more intense, but the reality is still the same.
How old was the son?
We don't know,
I think he might have put up a fight.
but
Really, Mom?
what?
Don't flinch.
I thought we were just going on a trip.
Moses was in Midian for 40 years. There's probably a pretty good likelihood that the son was already older.
Wow.
She say, hold still.
So the study portion of my Bible has a note. It says, in addition, Moses' wife, due to her Midianite background, may have opposed circumcision. Why would that be?
Never heard that before. But I guess it depends whether or not you see the Midianites as being people who kept the faith or people who didn't keep the faith.
So more people living a fake life.
More people living a fake life could be, yeah, but the reality is I don't think that her dad being a priest of God Most High would mean that he would be anti-circumcision. I mean, it
She
could
was a
have
rebel daughter.
She could be the rebel daughter, I guess, but I think realistically that the way I read it, and I could be wrong, again, hear me clearly, I could be wrong in this, but I think that that study note seems to be going the opposite direction of what the story is trying to tell us. You are on a mission for God, and you haven't even done step one for our family, and you're jeopardizing my boys. So I'm going to do what needs to be done so that you can do what you're supposed to do so you don't get my boys taken. That's the way I kind of read this.
Another puzzling statement is she touched the foreskin to his feet. Then I read down here, it says the Hebrew word for feet may refer to here to the male sex organs, so maybe it had nothing to do with feet in our language.
Those two are definitely for each other within Scripture. It's going to come up quite a bit down the road if we continue to go there, especially it's a big deal in the book of Ruth. Just saying. Side note, so if that's the case, she circumcised her son, lifts up Moses' thing and says, look, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. A little more graphic than what we probably want to write in.
I guess they get pretty graphic, why did they?
Finish the chapter? Or do you got something, Larry?
I was just thinking about that whole Zepporah thing, you know. If a guy says he's gonna do something, he'll do it, but
Amen, brother.
he don't need his wife reminding him every 3 or 4 months to do it again.
Or after 20 years, right?
4 years.
You preach on, Larry. Keep going.
I better just step back off the pole. I gotta ride home.
Let's finish the chapter. The Lord had said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him to speak, and all the signs that he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that God had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and they had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshiped.
So this whole time Aaron was just sitting in the wilderness waiting.
Calling number 25. Calling number 25. And it's your turn.
Your table's ready.
Also, the Lord spoke to Aaron.
The Lord spoke to Aaron, told him to go out in the wilderness and find his brother Moses, and apparently directed him where to go. Because you notice where they meet. They meet on the mountain of the Lord. And Moses tells Aaron everything before they go down the mountain. So whether the Zepporah thing happens or the Aaron thing happens first, I don't know, or maybe, I guess technically, Moses goes home, tells his wife we got a trip to take, asks his father-in-law for permission, but instead of going to Egypt, he goes back down to the mountain. And then Aaron meets him at the mountain where Zepporah is like, look, you're going to get my son killed, so we need to deal with this. We have the Zepporah incident. Aaron meets them there, and God's like, okay, all the pieces are aligned. Are you going to follow me now, Moses? And they do. Aaron does the talking. Moses does the walking. The people believe. And
Says he also did the signs.
They do the signs. The people believe. And they worship God in Egypt. This isn't just about them worshiping outside of Egypt. Amy Phillips, 14-17 says Aaron is on the way, but not they actually met up. Yes, so God's got this. God sent Aaron out. God's doing this with Moses. Moses goes talk to his father-in-law. Aaron's still on the journey. God's moving the chess pieces long before they ever need to line up. Any final thoughts? It kind of does feel a little bit like Genesis verse 2. Amy, I was wondering the same thing, Steve, but Moses just left out there. So, ladies, you got your first big hero. I'm surprised there aren't any daughters named Zepporah now. I mean, that was a name my sister wanted to name her first daughter, but she hasn't had any kids yet. Again, we know this story, don't we? I mean, we've been told this story in church, we've been told this story in Sunday school, we've been told this story by Hollywood. But isn't it interesting how the actual story is just a little different than the story we remember?
says Aaron older or younger than Moses?
Aaron is older. Aaron and Miriam are both older than,
How much older?
we don't fully know.
I mean, had been old enough to be out of that age span to be tossed in the.
Aaron was old enough that he wouldn't have been subject to being tossed in the river. But how much older than Moses, we really don't know. We don't know if Miriam is older than Aaron or Aaron is older than Miriam. We just know that they're both old enough to where Miriam is old enough to kind of watch her brother as he goes down the river. And Aaron is old enough that he's not subject to the death penalty. But as we saw all throughout Genesis, God is still orchestrating things as with that, let's pray. God, you know our whining, you know our complaining, you know our excuses, you know our objections. And yet, Lord, you still create paths beyond. Lord, I pray that we would have hearts that are open to receive your message. And Lord, when you give us your message, that we would have the courage to say what needs to be said to who needs to hear it. And Lord, I pray that you'd send people in our lives like Aaron when we feel inadequate, that you would give us that person who could speak on our behalf. And Lord, I pray that you'd give us people in our lives like Zepporah who would do the things that either we're too afraid to do or we've forgotten to do. But Lord, ultimately, may you bring us into your promised land of milk and honey. And may we be your people, not just in heaven in whatever that age is to come, but here on earth in the here and now. So Lord, may we glorify you by all that we say and do. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me stop the recording. We'll have to put the tables up to one side, and I've been asked if we can put all the chairs together, because apparently the state said it's not bad, it has to have chairs out. They only want one section of chairs and not. So,
Is it okay if we put two of them upright?
Get ready to work on.
oh yeah, we've got